Okay, so welcome everyone. For today's event, I'm going to be sharing a few announcements. I will give you a parent and research updates, and then I will share some information about the cup of tea. If this is your first time attending, this will give you a bit of an overview of how the process happens and what the event is all about. And then we will have our article summary, followed by the conversations with the group. So I would like to ask everyone to hold their questions about the article until after the article summary happens. We will have plenty of time to connect. This event is our first one where we are starting at 8 o'clock today and going right up till 9. And then if we have any more questions lingering, we're actually able to stay past 9 to continue chatting. So we don't have to rush, but I do realize there is another meeting happening at 9, and some of our team members have to, or some of our attendees might have to leave at that time. So the announcements I wanted to share was that you guys are all here to enjoy this event, and if you like participating in these kinds of events and knowing about them, the best way to really keep in touch and to be alerted to what's going on in the Retinoblastoma research community is to join the Retinoblastoma research community through our website. I have a little screenshot at the bottom of the screen of the website. In the top bar, there's a button RB Research Community. If you go into that, it will take you right to the sign up page. And if you have a question about that or not sure if you've already signed up, you could let me know and I will double check that for you. You could email me with any questions about the RB Research Community or any of the information that I'll be sharing tonight. My email is ivana.ristevsky@sickkids.ca. So once you sign up to RB Research Committee, you will have access to all the news and events that are happening within RB Research Community. One of the focuses we have right now is addressing priority number 3. Priority number 3 is one of the top 10 Retinoblastoma research priorities that was identified by parents, survivors, researchers, and health professionals. And we are addressing this priority. So I would like to ask anybody who's eligible and hasn't filled it out yet, if you're interested and are a parent of a retinoblastoma survivor, are over the age of 16, and the care was at least partly done in Canada, to please share the survey if you've already done it. And if you haven't, I do ask that you fill it out. We do need more people to fill out the survey. The richer the information, the more we know and understand about the needs of our community and can then create the right resources that are needed. If you need more information, you could contact us at retinoblastoma.research@sickkids.ca. And just a few updates. This is our first meeting after our 2023 Retinoblastoma Research Symposium. I hope you guys had just as much fun as I did. I enjoyed meeting new people and catching up with some old connections and friends and colleagues. In total, we had 65 in-person attendees and 23 virtual logins. So the 23 could be multiple people per computer screen. So it was a very big turnout. We had a lot of connection with people online and in person. And if you wanted to know more about the event or in a summary, we have a blog post on our website that summarizes all the different parts that we got to enjoy. Our next meeting will be our quarterly meeting. So join us on April 26th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Anybody in the Retinoblastoma research community would have already received a calendar invite, and updates about the meeting will be sent again. So make sure that you've signed up. And if you have any questions about it, you could let me know. But this meeting will be about discussing the goals that we've set at our annual general meeting during the Retinoblastoma Research Symposium. And we're also looking to incorporate some other activities, such as having guest speakers. So this one will be at 12 p.m., which is one of the time options. In the future, our quarterly meetings will try to test out at different time frames that might work for our community better, such as evenings or weekends. And a cup of tea, this is another quarterly event that happens. I am looking for volunteers for future cup of tea events. So anybody who's interested, patients, survivors, researchers, health professionals, anybody connected to the retinoblastoma community, if you're interested in partnering, please let me know. I'd be happy to share more information about how the process works. And once we set a plan, I will guide you through the whole process as well. So now about the cup of tea. The Cup of Tea is an event intended to bring the Canadian retinoblastoma community together for an informal discussion about a research article. This is very similar to something like a journal club. Discussions center around research articles which members of our Canadian retinoblastoma research community, Retinoblastoma Research Advisory Board, have created a plain language summary for. And the past Cup of Tea recordings are available on our YouTube channel and on Spotify. All you have to do is just search for retinoblastoma research. The process for developing the plain language summary has many steps to it, but I just wanted to share a highlight of anybody who is interested in perhaps partnering in a future cup of tea or just wants to know how this process is done. We start off with a patient and non-patient partner who then get to know each other, meet to discuss an article. The topic and the article is picked by the patient partner based on their interests. And together we work on creating a plain language summary. The writing part is done by our patient partner. And then using the summary, we create the cup of tea presentation around it. And I help guide the entire process, make sure that book the meetings, as many as we need or as little as we need, and answer the steps and make sure everyone is aware of how to proceed. So today's cup of tea, we're going to be discussing an article titled An Exploratory Study of Sleep Habits in School-Age Survivors of Retinoblastoma. The plain language summary for this article is available on our website. And the presenters today, we have Leslie Lowe, who's a parent of 3 children with retinoblastoma, and who's a longtime member of the retinoblastoma community. Leslie has participated in several CRAB initiatives and attended many events, including the Retinoblastoma Research Symposium, monthly meetings, and research workshops, just to name a few. And Kimberly Courtney is a family lead coordinator at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, or CHEO, with experience as a child life specialist. Kimberly supported the children's program at the 2018 Retinoblastoma Research Symposium and has attended retinoblastoma symposiums in the past, as well as the One Retinoblastoma World. So I'm going to pass it over to Leslie, and you just let me know, Leslie, if I'm too slow with switching the slides, just give me a little nod. Great. Or something.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? My audio is okay? Okay, yeah. Perfect. Just before I start, get that cleared up. Okay, so just to start off, I feel like I know several of you, but just in case, my name is Leslie Lowe. In 2013, almost can't remember it, I had identical triplets. And when they were 3 months old, we found one of them had some concern. We had some concerns with the way his eye looked and found out all of them had retinoblastoma. So we started traveling from Alberta to Toronto for treatment. And we're very, very happy with our treatment. All 3 of them did need an enucleation, but they each have one good eye with great central vision, 20/20 vision. So I was crazy enough to have 2 more children. So that puts me up to 6 boys. And I'll just, in case there's any who have visual impairments on the call, the far right picture is a family picture where my children look calm and clean. And that's not usually the case, but my oldest is now 11 and my youngest is almost 2. And then if we kind of go in clockwise, the bottom left picture is a picture of all three of the triplets after an EUA, we kind of would take over the hospital. So they are in 3 separate beds, all eating their popsicle, just thinking life's the best. But we kind of, when we would have treatments, we would kind of take over the whole the whole pre-op and recovery room. On the top left is a picture of all 3 of them sleeping in their car seats, which, you know, is a miracle when you get 3 babies sleeping at the same time. But for us, that was survival mode when we were traveling. They had to learn to sleep in their car seats a lot. And then just the picture in the middle was just a picture of one of my babies sleeping in the hospital. And that just reminded me of, I was kind of trying to capture pictures of where I thought, you know, it's hard to get good sleep when you're sleeping in a hospital with tubes and everything hooked up to you. So you can go on to the next slide. Then I found a few more gems of some sleeping pictures. So just to start off, like when my triplets were, I mean, ever since they were little, they have been pretty good sleepers. I would say in my experience, I've thought that some of their struggles are because they would have parties in their bedroom at night instead of go to sleep. You know, they'd jump into each other's crib or yeah, try and share a toddler bed together. So in these pictures on the far left is one with all 3 of them in a little toddler bed, and they all 3 can't fit. So one of them has one leg dangling off, and he's almost like holding his whole body on with one arm, and his chin's barely on the on the bed. And because they weren't sleeping well at night because they were having parties, they would fall asleep during the day. So the next 2 pictures, one is of Mason asleep on the ground in the middle of eating a snack. I think many moms have had that experience where their kid falls asleep eating. And then another one where my kid was sleeping on a couch and his nose is just sandwiched against the couch, just cannot be comfortable, cannot be good sleep, right? And then just finally one more of them, all 3 kind of sleeping together, one in a separate bed. But yeah, I was looking through these. I had some great ones that just made me really think about, boy, I was obsessed with sleep when they were little because I knew how important it was to them. And them sleeping well was a lifeline for me as well. And as they've gotten older, certain aspects of their sleep has changed, but there are still other factors, right? And I still do really think about how they're sleeping and how it impacts so much of their life and how they do in school and socially and physically and how much it can impact. So this article is really interesting because it attempts to help us catch a glimpse of how children who've gone through retinoblastoma treatments may have impacts to their sleep. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, so the background of this study, it was to really answer 3 main questions. How are school-aged RB survivors sleeping? Are there any links between, you know, what's reported with their sleep habits and, you know, what difficulties they may be having and how it translates to their quality of life, you know, physically, socially, you know, how are they able to cope? And then do parents and children report how their sleep habits are differently or the same? You know, are parents saying they're getting great sleep and the children are saying they aren't, or do they line up? Okay, next slide. Oh, and I didn't say, but it was of only 69. It was 69 children, 26 had bilateral treatment, 46 had one eye enucleated. Oh wait, or is this the next? This is, okay, yeah. And then so there were 3 main studies that they used to do this questionnaire, studies that have been done in other research. So because they wanted to compare RB kids to the general population, right? And so to do that, it's best to have the same study to compare. So they used the Children's Report of Sleep Patterns, the Children's Sleep Habits Questionnaire, and the Pediatric Quality of Life Inventory. And all those kind of measure sleep and also quality of life and how you can kind of relate and connect them to each other. Next. Okay, so the results were really interesting that it showed. So this study mostly compared to the general population, those who haven't gone through, you know, retinoblastoma. And compared to the general population, it showed that parents were indicating more bedtime resistance, not wanting to go to bed, delay to start of sleep. So once they were in bed, how long it seemed that their kids were taking to go to sleep. And then also that their kids seemed really, you know, had a lot more daytime sleepiness than the general population. The children were reporting they had problems with, different sleep locations. That was a big factor. More restless leg syndrome, which would be like when you're sleeping and you just have to move your legs. So they're just painful and you need to be moving your legs all the time, and so it'll wake you up because your legs are bothering you. And then parasomnia, which would be like sleepwalking, nightmares, night terrors, waking up in the night, causing you not to get great sleep. Okay, so some more interesting information that we gleaned from this research study was RB survivors and unilateral RB reports. It was just interesting that they reported some greater caffeine consumption than the general population, which we know caffeine before bed may not be a good idea. Research has shown that. So, that was something interesting. RB survivors who've had a enucleation, I thought this one was interesting, reported that they used more electronics before, and we also know electronic usage can impact sleep, especially right before bed. Parents of RB survivors who went under enucleation reported, sorry, my screen, I can't read, here we go. Reported increased sleep disordered breathing, which was kind of interesting as well. And then something that was interesting is male survivors reported more parasomnia, which is those nightmares, night terrors, than female RB survivors. But that is also consistent with the general population in general, that boys tend to have more problems with parasomnia. But then females reported higher levels of insomnia than males, which is also consistent to the general population. All right, so comparing this table, I needed explained to me for a long time to understand it. So I'm going to try and explain it, but if someone wants to jump in if I botch it, feel free to. But what was really interesting about this one is that on the left side, it talks about certain reports that they're reporting of sleep that affect their sleep. And on the right side, it's what the parents are reporting as far as their quality of life. So these are two different studies, right? One that studied their symptoms that they have with sleep, and one that's studying how they say their physical quality of life is, how they're doing in school, socially, emotionally. And there were a couple really strong ones where the child reported, parasomnias, and the parent was also reporting that, they struggled emotionally, and it has a low, or I'm trying to think of the best one for an example. I thought it was the parasomnia, but maybe it was the school one. But basically where a parent was, where the children are reporting that they're not getting good sleep, and then that it's also reporting that they're doing poorly in school, that can show a really good correlation that there could be further information gleaned through more research that could really help us understand if this is an effect of treatments and what interventions could be done to help prevent this. All right.
I think it was also the bedtime fears and worries that we were looking at the time too.
Yes, I think you're right. I think it absolutely was right. And especially you look at on the bedtime fears and worries, how the child had really strong, reporting. So basically, if a child said they had bedtime fears and worries, almost always they were also struggling a little bit physically, emotionally, socially, and in school. Correct? I believe that's explains it. So just really interesting to kind of think about how sleep can really impact so many aspects of someone's life and how important it is.
Strong when I was a kid. Sure.
Okay. So looking at sleep patterns in relationship to quality of life, both parents and RB survivors report that poor sleep habits did decrease quality of life, and especially when the child was having high fears and worries, it correlated to the parents reporting that they struggled socially and physically, and that is the much better way to word what I was just showing in that table. Yeah, next one. Okay, so basically, in conclusion, this study concluded that sleep-related difficulties are present in children with retinoblastoma. It is higher than what was reported in the general population, according to the study. Sleep is very important, and they recommend that some targeted psychoeducation on healthy sleep habits or routine screening during follow-up appointments could hopefully help. But they did also point out that further research is really needed to get a better understanding of the changes that occur during the school years, and especially how it differs by sex, in order to provide the best support. Okay, so as we read this paper, we have a lot of different, questions or different things that came up that we thought, well, why didn't they study this? Why didn't they study this? And then I had to understand that this paper is what's called an exploratory study. And so it wasn't a huge sample size. It was one hospital. But the intention of an exploratory study is to see if more research could be done, like if they think that further analysis could find worthwhile information. And so with that in mind, we started thinking of what we thought might be some potential things to study. And this is where we would love to have some good discussion from the professionals and the parents on here, because some questions we had is, is the caffeine usage based on the population? At this center, is caffeine usage just more common in that area? So a larger and more diverse sample, that was just one example of why a larger, more diverse sample from other hospitals would be really beneficial. And then more in-depth analysis of treatments received. So we also thought, does having an enucleation, how much does that impact sleep disturbances? Or how many EUAs did the child have? How long was the duration of their treatment? And, does that also increase sleep disturbances? So many factors with that, and we will, Ivana, do you think I should pause here and let people comment, or just kind of go on these and then let people?
Yeah, we could start the discussion now.
Okay.
What do you guys think? If anybody had a chance to read the article itself, or read the plain language summary we have on our website, or just what they saw in the presentation right now, any other questions that you have that maybe a future study could try to answer?
As Leslie said, I think really important is what was the real treatment burden of the children, and we actually have some adults now who might be on this call who had like 100 EUAs, and so it would be interesting to really look at specific groups that were extremes of treatment or something like that, and see how that influenced.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I know when my triplets were going through treatments, I believe that there was newer research out about, learning disabilities with having a number of times under anesthetic. And so that was something trying to limit. So, it would be really interesting to know if it affects sleep.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go on to the next one, but I'm going to pause after each one now and see if anyone wants to talk, because that's what I love discussion, because it's so important to get so many perspectives, and this is a great chance to do it. So comparing the results to similar research of childhood cancer survivors or the visually impaired. So this article does talk about at the beginning, to lay some groundwork, where it says that there have been studies done on childhood cancer survivors and also visually impaired. And it has shown that they also have worse sleep outcomes than the general population. And this research article didn't dive into how RB compares to childhood cancer survivors, or how it compares to visually impaired, which we thought might be very valuable as well. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that? All right. And then comparing to a parent's assessment of themselves. And this might be one that, as a parent, I, would notice more than a professional researcher, but and this is where Kimberly can probably hop in too. But as parents, I think sometimes we're we worry about how much, I don't know, the impact of how we react to their treatments or what we're doing wrong to, to cause them to go through different things. And I think as a parent, it's hard not to get anxious about their treatment and worry. And we kind of thought it would be very interesting to see if parents who struggle with sleep themselves or have really struggled with anxiety during treatment, or, you know, just in general have had a higher level of stress due to treatment, if that, you know, also impacts the child, and whether, you know, a parent's assessments, if there's any correlation.
Yeah, definitely. When I was reading that section, my child life perspective was there. I was thinking about, well, even something Leslie said when we were preparing about knowledge is power, and just how that can be really comforting to a family to know, oh, you know, some sleep issues is not uncommon, that, you know, we're seeing these themes across children who have had treatment. So almost like that self-compassion, being not so hard on yourself, and recognizing that to a degree, it is normal to have some sleep difficulty with your child. So even that is a starting point. And then, yeah, as we looked at how children assess themselves and how parents did, I was thinking about, in child life, we talk about that bi-directional relationship, you know, our perception and also the impact of the way we behave. You know, we influence our children and they influence us. So it's just something to keep in mind with sleep habits and hygiene, just knowing, like, you know, your own response does have somewhat of an impact on your child and vice versa. So I think just ultimately don't be so hard on yourself. It goes a long way, you know, just patience and self-compassion, and just knowing you're not alone, I think, can help a lot.
You know, these comments and your analysis here is so interesting. I wonder, could you together, all of you, write to the authors and ask them all these questions? I bet they would love that, and they'd answer you back, and you'd learn some answers to them, or they would spread out your knowledge on these different points.
That's a really nice idea. We didn't invite them to the cup of tea, but I think just timing didn't work for them. But maybe that's a nice way to do it offline and engage them in a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if anyone could comment, maybe from the research side. Sometimes we come across articles that have data from centers, you know, maybe in the States, or we think that there's a lot of similarities, but there might not be. And I've often heard that like the Canadian population is very unique. I just wonder if somebody from research could comment on what differences that they do find between RB studies in the States versus States results versus Canadian results. And do you think that there would be differences in this study if there was one done in Canada?
I think retinoblastoma is the same everywhere. The treatments are different, and maybe the most important difference we have in Canada is the involvement of parents. And so that's fundamental to this sort of research. We haven't done a study like this here. Would you like to do that?
This would go right along with priority 3, wouldn't it?
I think it's a good point. I would think you might well get different answers, or more deep answers in certain direction, or something that might totally surprise you.
Leslie, would you like me to open up the rest of our questions?
Sure. I mean, I think we kind of talked a little bit about that last one, but just finding out if there is, it would be interesting to know if, as a general population, do RB survivors tend to use a little more screen because, you know, visual impairment or different things have caused, you know, or just have habits been created at younger times in treatment that have made it, you know, would be interesting, the usage of screen time or, you know, caffeine consumption. But again, we've kind of talked about that in the last ones. So let's go on to the next questions.
use of
Oh.
screen time, maybe we're training the kids in in the pre-op area in screen use.
Yeah. You know, it was interesting because I was attending another Zoom conference yesterday about screen time usage. And, you know, like it was talking about, don't give your kids screen in the grocery store, you know, they need to have those uncomfortable situations where they're bored and different things. But I'm like, until you're a parent in the pre-op room, not wanting to disturb, and probably not the pre-op room's the right place, but with so many appointments that these children have, or flights on an airplane where you just are embarrassed that your kid may be noisy, or you're just so tired yourself, you know, and you're coping with so many hard feelings, that I think as a parent, you tend to, you know, let your child use a little more screen, because it's hard to deal with those uncomfortable moments where your kids, you know, struggling without, when you're already under so much stress. So, okay, so it looks like we have enough time to start with the parents. We thought it'd be fun to start with the parents first. Do any of you experience sleep concerns with your children? Did you have ones that were harder when they were younger and they've gotten better or worse? Or, you know, any impacts you're wondering if might be related to sleep? Any parents want to speak up? We'd love to hear from you.
I have a question. Do we know like what age children this study was conducted on?
I forgot to say it. So they were almost 11 years old was the median age. Correct?
Yeah, the average age of the kids was about 11, but we didn't have an age range in the article.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering like how the sleep pattern would be different as a kid starts to grow. Like my daughter is right now 2 years, but as she grows and as she is experiencing these treatments and having more understanding of what is going on around her, maybe that may be one of the contribution for her having a sleep disturbance at night, or having thoughts about it as she grows.
And the study didn't really show us fully, you know, is it something physiological, like with the amount of sunlight? Like it was exploratory, so we didn't quite know the factors. So it did make us wonder about those other ones, those environmental factors, right? Like we think about children at that age, you know, where there's certain things we did for their sleep that maybe we didn't with other children. Kind of like Leslie was saying with the screen time, or maybe your child's, you know, at that young toddler age where they're starting to learn how to self-soothe and put themselves to sleep. Maybe we, you know, tried to sort of, I call it like smooth the road, or cuddle them more often, or rock them to sleep, just because we wanted to almost like compensate for the difficulty they were experiencing in other parts of their life. So I definitely wonder, like, what are those psychosocial components too that are kind of playing in here? Because there really are so many confounding variables, I guess you'd say, so many things you kind of want to pull out and study more.
Yeah, I agree. It would definitely be interesting to learn like how, as the kids grow, like how this would impact them.
It seemed like if we know this knowledge now and our children are still young, then really working on those good early sleep habits, like even when they're traveling for treatment, or if they have an overnight at the hospital, trying to maintain like a schedule and routine that kind of resembles home, like with the following day and night, limiting the screen time, you know, building out that sort of structure and routine in those early years can be, I think, a helpful factor kind of for any child that's experiencing a hospitalization, but maybe especially for RB kids. And you think too about the age they're having all the treatment done. It's that developmental age and stage they're at for this. You know, there's so much learning and growth that happens during those early years, and it can be maybe a little compounded by things like separation anxiety, or You know, sometimes they have those stalling tactics for going to bed because they have that sense of autonomy and I'm like big now and I make choices. So there's lots, there's lots of challenging factors for that age. But I do think those early routines and knowing you're not alone and kind of putting those questions out there to your professionals is a good starting point.
We had a question in the chat about morbidities. And just to answer it, we didn't get a lot of information about the children. There was a little bit of information about their retinoblastoma, but even then it wasn't very clear, you know, how many unilateral versus bilateral, and then the treatments they had. So it was quite a little bit of information we received, and we didn't get any about morbidities.
I was just gonna speak. So I have a 2.5-year-old daughter who has unilateral retinoblastoma, and so she hasn't had her eye enucleated, but we're trying to figure out, is it RB or being a 2.5-year-old that is causing those issues of sleep. So yeah, we're definitely seeing those kind of early stage pieces that are in place. So I'd also be curious, it'd have to be retrospective, but did folks remember back like around the times that their children were diagnosed, assuming it was younger, you know, did they also have worse sleep than maybe their siblings or something like that too? Because we literally tried to put her in a toddler bed and had to put the crib thing back up just because it was difficult. So I think that'd be another interesting question. And then if I remember right, the majority of the children in the study had either unilateral or bilateral enucleation. So I'm curious what the difference is between children who don't and the degree of vision that they have and those sorts of things. So would be interesting.
Does anyone, are there any parents with a little bit older children who can maybe share their experience now, how their child's sleep is now versus maybe how it was back during treatment times?
I might just share that for me, it was like life or death. If my kids got good sleep, right? Because having 3 of them, it was basically all I thought about. When we would travel, it would be like, okay, I'm going to take this flight so they can get a nap here. And then when we get to Toronto, I'm going to only change 1 hour time zone because I can't do 2 hours. There's no way our schedule can. So when I get to Toronto, we're going to do a 9 p.m. bedtime because at home it's 8 p.m., which would be 10 p.m. Toronto time. And so it was just like, I thought about it almost as much as I was thinking about their treatment, was like, how am I going to get them good sleep? But those habits, you know, really did help them as they continued on. But another point you really brought up is this study would be so fascinating to study how their sleep was during treatment and then how it is, you know, like how important that is to know, like, were the habits created then? Was it the anxiety that, you know, they developed during treatment? And Maureen over the chat gave a really good comment about how anxiety, she feels, really plays a role in her children's sleep disturbances, you know, and how they absorb stress. And so I think those are really valid points to point out, you know, that anxiety could really be playing a big role. And we need to, like our priority 3 says, we really need to be focusing on understanding what type of anxiety these RB kids are developing and families, and if there's anything that resources we could give to the patients and the parents to help them. And then again, another comment about depression and anxiety are correlated with sleep problems. So yeah, all really great comments, everyone. I'm so glad. Do we want to, any other parents want to chime in?
Or any survivors? Do we have any survivors here who can comment on their sleep?
This is perfect because it's our next question and we just got something in the chat. So Lynn said, as a survivor, I always struggled from sleep insomnia and many more because I have OCD. So I'm still confused if it's from radiation or chemo. It's really, thank you, Lynn, for sharing, because I think that's so helpful for parents to hear the experiences of a survivor. Anything in case you want to add anything talking?
Good afternoon, all. Hope you're doing well. So actually, I'm Lynn from Lebanon. I'm a cancer survivor and the first case in Lebanon. So I'm still confused between if I have OCD because of radiation and chemotherapy. And I struggled from insomnia and many more about sleep. And yes, I'm still confused how to deal with it. So, and like some doctors, they said because of OCD, you can't sleep. And some of them say because of chemo and radiation. And some of them maybe said you should take some medicine to sleep much more better, or to take some vitamins. So yes, this is my struggle journey about sleep.
Thank you for sharing and welcome. So neat to have you on the call.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to comment on? I mean, it does. It feels like one of those hard situations where, you can't find the right solution because there's so many factors that, who knows which one or how to help with it.
I would like to comment just on my own situation now. My daughter is 14 going on 15 this year, and she was diagnosed at a week old and had a few treatments, and we traveled quite a bit for the first couple of years of her life. So I have experience with my non-RB child having sleep disturbances, and then also my RB child having sleep disturbances. And I have to say, like, my feeling is it's from anxiety and like things going on in the house that the kids are unsure of, about treatment. My son had severe separation anxiety when we were flying to Toronto because he couldn't come with us a lot of the times, and he actually spiraled into a really deep anxiety, and ended up getting like having OCD, having some really bad like instances, and we actually had to reach out and get like a therapist for him because he was just struggling so bad. And now he's 19, he sleeps like a log all the time. But then like my daughter had sleep disturbances just because of the treatment. She was uncomfortable, some of the pain and stuff. She did have a lot of anxiety, which like, it turned into thumb sucking and like twirling her hair like compulsively. And that's like a coping mechanism with anxiety. So she's 14 now. She actually takes melatonin regularly to sleep because she just has a hard time shutting down. So that is my experience with the sleep disturbance as a parent. So I think with finding my son therapy with a therapist, with a child therapist, it was great. We were able to get him back to on the other side of severe separation anxiety, and we were able to calm down some of his OCD behaviors. But like, I feel like mental health has a lot to do with the sleep disturbance.
Thank you, Maureen, for sharing, especially those, reminding us about the siblings, because I think I have a few other children too, and it is really hard on those siblings, and really appreciated you being vulnerable and sharing that with us. And Maureen was someone who totally reached out to me when we were first diagnosed, and I was so thankful for. So it's fun to see her on the call. We did have a couple of questions for the researchers. Do we need to switch to those really quick, Ivana, do you think, or do we have enough time just to talk about that? But I'm going to keep on this. So we've had a couple, kind of saying that this is to the researchers as well, but they struggled with sleep. How do patients advocate to get help with this? What's the best way for patients to talk to their doctor to help find a solution? Anything you doctors can help us with here?
Hi, my name is Cami. I'm a genetic counselor in Colorado. I just wanted to, since everyone was being quiet until we both spoke up at the same time. I was just going to say, I think the biggest thing is that something is said. If you're worried, to say it. A lot of the time, providers will ask, what else? What other questions do you have? And if you don't say anything, we don't know. So I think just making sure to not hesitate to speak up. And if you're more comfortable sending electronic health record questions, since that's easier now with technology, that's always an option too, just if something's on your mind, to reach out. And sometimes that does result in doing research studies like this when patients do bring up questions.
Something I was going to mention was, which goes right along with speaking up, was I was talking to a physician once who said when they start their appointments, they like to say, what are you wanting to get out of your appointment, rather than the eye looks great, you must be so happy, But as a patient, being prepared to come to an appointment and express the concerns you have, and not just react to the information that you hear and then ask your questions to come to your appointment prepared to say, hey, these are the things I'm wondering about or struggling with. Any resources you can take me to, because I know I'm victim of that. Sometimes when I go for appointments, I'm just too tired to think about what I want before. I'm like, I'll think about them when I'm there at the appointment. And we all know that doesn't happen when you get to the appointment. Oh, yeah, right here, Cami, you're right on spot with me. She said, write down your questions so that you don't forget what you've been saying. Any other people want to speak up?
I just wanted to share one way to give feedback about your experiences is through our Priority 3 study, and providing that feedback about the needs will really be able to help inform what resources families and patients and survivors need. So I really appreciate everybody sharing their stories and really thinking about this topic, but then sharing information with the research just so we can make that change and then help the future families. So don't forget about the study. I will post the link in the chat in a minute too. And
can I just pop in just 1 second too, because you said what can we do? I would definitely, because we go see Dr. Galley for our eyes, we get our checkups and stuff, but if it's like a sleep disturbance or something like that, you should actually be checking in with your pediatrician or your general practitioner for help as well.
Good point. Thank you. Never feel badly to raise concerns, with your healthcare team, MD and pediatrician. So Alyssa also is trying to make sure we remember to don't leave. And I'm married to a family doctor, so I should really be saying that. Don't leave them out of the circle. Let's go on to the next one, so we have a little bit of time for the researchers before they have to hop away. So we have a couple questions for the researchers, and a little bit of this we've kind of talked about. Because we did mention how much sleep training can factor into these findings. Let's think, which question, Ivana, do you think we should start with, just since they have to leave?
Maybe just open it to anybody who
Yeah.
has a feeling about a question they want to talk about.
Yeah, I guess really quick though, we were really interested to know if any centers are aware of if they do talk to their patients about sleep or provide any resources for sleep, or in survival clinics, if any who have survivor clinics, what they do as far as anything with sleep. But any other question too, because I'm not sure we'll get any answers on that.
I have never asked anybody about sleep. Sorry. Nor have I been given information about sleep. Sorry.
Will we expect that to change tomorrow, Dr. Galley? I'm just kidding.
Of course.
We were just at our oncology appointment, for our yearly oncology appointment, earlier this month, in Calgary. And actually that was one of the questions that our oncologist asked. It was about our sleep, my daughter's sleep. So it is asked at an oncology appointment.
All right. So we still have just a little bit more time. If anyone has any other questions, or it would be interesting to hear from some of the professionals what they think about this study, if they're ready to start a study on this.
Maybe if somebody can comment. We've been having these discussions about how much of these findings are about this retinoblastoma diagnosis versus maybe the RB journey itself. And has any researchers come across something like that? Any information about how disease-specific diagnosis can have an impact versus the lifestyle around the disease?
I certainly have not heard anything about that, no, but it's not an area I've looked for either. I think this is a really good paper to stimulate a lot more work. And the CRAB group across Canada have a fantastic opportunity to really build on this paper and take it in all the directions you've got an audience in Canada that's well studied and well known and eager, I would think. So I'm not going to lead your study at all. You should, but I think that it's a really good direction to go.
So if we don't have more questions, we do have some really great comments from Kimberly. If you'd like to share some maybe child life advice about building those good sleep habits.
Sure. And there's some neat comments in the chat too that we want to circle back to. One thing I would say is try reframing. Like if you're walking away from the call today thinking like, oh, we do have sleep difficulty, like what's going well? Like what's in the night routine now? Do you have a book that you read, a bath with your child? Maybe there's one element that's going well and you can kind of build on that. Having that daily schedule that you build out with your child is helpful. I kind of was thinking too, when you, on the flip side, when you're going for treatment, is there something that as professionals that we could be doing more for families? Is it like self-advocating, like a sign on the patient door that says like, so-and-so sleeping, like, please knock quietly, or, where you advocate for yourself and your routine, or like, getting the lights down low at the hospital if you're spending the night, or are there things, you could bring from home to your hotel, if you're doing that trek all the way to Toronto, that could maintain some of those early habits that you're forming with your child. And then I guess too, just remembering like the developmental stage, there is difficulty with sleep with toddlers anyway. And I always try to up choice where possible. Like when you think about these children having to do a number of things that they don't want to do, and they're just sort of establishing their independence. So I would say upping choice where possible, like, oh, do you want the purple pajamas or do you want the blue pajamas tonight? Things like that can really help a child who's facing these, sometimes adverse responses to treatment or hospitalization. So those would be sort of my quick tips.
Kimberly is such a good resource of information, and she's so good at not making, like for me, I was like, okay, I love hearing those because it doesn't make me feel guilty about it. It just makes me want to be better and do better. And I hope that everyone who came really feels that way, that this is just really interesting to kind of be aware of, that maybe sleep is impacted and that we don't need to feel alone, and that, we can reach out to professionals, we can reach out to other survivors or parents and see, get some helpful tips and really focus on, the things we're doing well and what we can do better. Cami did have one comment about looking at sleep while embedded in more overall quality of life issues, so how really is quality of life of these survivors, which would be priority 3 again, and especially sleep among that, right? How it is with overall quality of life. Cami, did I even explain your thoughts right?
Yeah. Yes, you did fine. I just think there's so many things to look at, and sleep is one of them. So I just think it may be some of that kind of post-traumatic issues of doing everything in the hospital that can impact life in many ways.
Yeah, it really kind of shows how there's so many factors. Snowball effect of treatment, and sleep is a great one to study because they seem to study it a lot already, to base off of what the general population is reporting, but really how many other quality of life issues are RB survivors encountering and what could be helped. Be really interesting. All right. Any other questions or thoughts?
Well,
We'll turn the time back.
Yeah, we can. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming before our health professionals had to leave. Stay tuned for our next cup of tea, which is planned for June 2023. Again, please let me know if anybody's interested to partner in a future cup of tea. We have June planned already, so we're looking for September and December of this year and planning into the future. You could email me. My email's listed here, Ivana, ivana.ristevsky@sickkids.ca. And then you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Of course, visit our website for more information and blogs and event info. That's www.rbcanadaresearch.com. And if you have any other questions, please do let me know. I'm happy to share more information about the cup of tea process and any other crab related items.
I feel like I need to add a plug in because I like seeing her asking for someone to to be one of the cup of tea people, and I kept being like, we'll see about it. Then she asked me specifically. I'm like, okay, but Yvonne is awesome to work with. She tries to make it as easy as possible and not overwhelming. And it's like, I read the article the first time, I was like, oh, I have no idea what it's saying, but she provided the resources to help me really understand it and feel confident. And Kimberly was so great to work with, and it was a really fun experience. So if you're thinking about it, it is fun. It's a great way to get informed.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And thank you so much, Kimberly, for sharing all your child life wisdom and experience with us today too, and everyone for participating and